Hi there, and welcome to my video series on how people got into cyber. Today I've got Mohammed Shah with me from London Stock Exchange. He's actually just moved into an information security officer role, working under the BISO there at London Stock Exchange. He comes from a offensive security background, but he's a cybersecurity generalist. And we're going to get right into it because I really want to hear his story. I'm really keen to understand, how did you get into cyber, Mohammed? And welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Nice for you to invite me, and thanks for taking me on for the call. How did I get into security? So I've been in cyber for just over 10 years now. Prior to being in cyber, I spent 10 years working in IT. So my very first IT job, out of university, I was a help desk analyst, working on configuring Outlook, printers, all that kind of fun stuff, getting on people's desks, plugging things in as you typically do. Working within, a help desk role, I moved into a sysadmin role. Again, staying within the world of infrastructure, and again expanding my skills, starting understanding how servers work, administrating, managing, maintaining them. I worked again in IT for at least 10 years. I've also worked for managed services within that time as well, and also had a slight twist in my direction with IT when I started to work in the professional services environment, and that was around the use of SCCM, SCOM, application virtualization, all that kind of fun stuff. And the way I landed and got into cyber, it was I kind of fell into it, to be honest. So I've spent 10 years working in infra, working across all types of technologies, networks, domain servers, all of that kind of fun stuff. Had a phone call from a recruiter about a role. They said this role was a bit of an interesting one. They said, we want someone that has all these IT skills, but we need someone here that's actually going to come in and look after cyber tools. Again, it was quite interesting for myself. At that time, cyber was around, isn't so prolific as it is now, but it was just an opportunity that I just wanted to put myself forward. I went through a couple of interviews, and then lo and behold, they offered me the role. So, stepped into this role, completely green to the world of cyber. I mean, the only thing I did relate to cyber during my infrastructure days at that time was around, your antivirus deployment and patching of your systems. So I was, seconded to look after and manage security tools. So it was like a security engineering function looking after identity access management, data loss prevention, and a touch of vulnerability management. I was the sole person looking after all of those tool sets. Again, very green to the world of cyber. So what I did was actually just knuckle myself down and use transferable skills. That was, for me, was an important thing. So I came from an infrastructure background. I know how to manage, maintain systems and services. Again, those cyber tools, it's an infrastructure-based technology that needs to be watered and fed and looked after. So again, working through those technologies and working with those, understanding how the systems work. Probably about a year into doing that, I just decided that I really want to start really getting a feel for what I'm actually doing. So I'm doing a role. I'm not a part of the actual cyber team. I really want to get into the world of cyber. So I took it upon myself to do some certifications. There's one that I actually did. It's quite an interesting one. Everyone talks about CISP, but there's one called SSCP, which is by IC2 Squared, which is your Systems Security Certified Professional. And as I was doing some self-studying, again, this is all self-study in my own time, burning the midnight oil while I'm doing my role, understanding the concepts of cybersecurity, how you would apply particular types of standards, technologies, encryption types with all the technology that you use within your environment. As I was learning and progressing, it started making it really clear to me what my role is in the current position that I was in, how to go after the tools, maybe more effective, and it just kind of ignited this need for me to want to learn and understand more. I talk about me being a cyber generalist. So spent 4 years in that particular role. I thought, okay, it's time for me to stretch my legs and go into that and really get into all the cyber. Moved into a subsequent role working as a security engineer. And again, starting to get introduced to more technologies and newer cyber domains. I went from, doing identity access management and data loss prevention to start looking at, SOC, more depth with vulnerability management, business processes, patch management to actually reduce, the footprint of vulnerabilities in an organization. With me, I think I've always been a bit of a sponge. I've always quite enjoyed understanding and learning things. So my thirst just continued. And over the span of around 10 years, I've covered quite a lot of domains. I've done, again, access, identity access management, DLP, vulnerability management, SOC, security engineering, vulnerability management, and some GRC elements too. I was quite fortunate that I fell into the world of cyber. Again, it was around the time where cyber was known, but again, it wasn't as well known and prevalent as it is now, and it's like an industry area to work. So that, in a nutshell, is how I got myself into cyber. And what I did was, the last certification I've done recently, it wasn't recent, it was probably about 3 years ago now, was CISP. So I picked CISP at the right time. A lot of people just have this thing where they talk about CISP when they want to get into into the cyber world, but CISP has its place and its time, and I think you have to kind of be in that journey and done several years to kind of want to go deep with CISP. And again, it ties in quite broadly with when you start working particular manager or senior manager positions within cyber.
Absolutely. What I love there is the fact that you basically came from an IT infrastructure background. You then sort of fell into doing the IAM, PAM, identity access management, that side of things, learning from the ground up, gaining information, understanding of patching, understanding of sort of, incident, not so much incident, but more like sort of business continuity and disaster recovery solutions. So that's really good. You mentioned some certs there. Did you do any boot camps then once you were in cyber? Did you go off and, I mean, I know you've got a couple of certificates, one more recently and one a few years back, but did you do anything within defensive or offensive security? Did you do any sort of CEH or anything like that?
Interesting, I did actually. A lot of it was from my understanding and just my general background knowledge and going off the back of it and learning. For me, again, there's different styles of learning, I guess, for everyone. And for me, I don't think boot camp is a way for me to learn. Boot camp, you go in, you kind of get it pushed down to you in a short space of period. I like to try and learn at self-paced. So I really digest what I'm learning and what I understand. So I'm one of the few guys, I guess, out there that doesn't have a lot of cyber certifications, but I've got a lot of experience behind those domains. And I think you just got to be very careful of kind of just falling into that trap of just being, certified to everything. It doesn't give the great impression. I feel sometimes you apply for roles, you've got you've got a certification on one aspect of cyber, and you've got one against another, and it kind of just draws a bit of a conclusion of, does this person know what they actually want to do and where they want to be? They feel like they've kind of gone around and done a bit of a Pokemon, kind of collect them all with the cyber certs.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think there's no substitute for experience. There's no substitute to being more specialized. I think the higher up the food chain you go, maybe you need to be more generalist. But certainly in the early days, I think it's important to be specialized so that you understand one area like an expert. The whole SME is really important, being a subject matter expert. And I think that's what would then drive people to eventually become CISOs, BISOs, head of, that they understand their particular aspect, but they understand all the other aspects well enough to be able to cover them, or they know people within the organization that they trust that can give them the lowdown on those areas. So I agree with that totally. One final question then for you. What advice do you give to entry-level candidates trying to break into the industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I do get asked that question infrequently, but generally when someone's asked me, how do I want to get into cyber? First question, ask them, okay, what field of cyber? And that's the bit that I think a lot of people don't understand is there's multiple fields. It's entry level across multiple, security fields. There's SOC, there's pen test, security engineering, application security, vulnerability management, GRC, just to name a few of them. And each of those disciplines, they have entry level, requirements for them. And what I was trying to suggest is anyone who wants to break into cyber is to go off and do a bit of homework, to actually look at the various security fields that are available and, read and understand what they are. That would help you kind of decide, okay, I am, reading about, if I talk in the vein of vulnerability management, I understand what vulnerability management the needs are, what the kind of the requirements are for that. That's going to be my angle. I'd always suggest when it comes to certifications as well, that always start with your entry level and go for vendor neutral certifications. Absolutely vendor neutral is important, because irrespective of the vendor, the principle of security, it doesn't change. That framework is always the same. There's absolutely no changes. So start with your CompTIA, Security Plus. IC recently have released the ISCCC certified, which is the equivalent of CompTIA. And then sometimes you may want to supplement that. So if let's just say you wanted to dive into more the pen test at some point, getting your vendor neutral certification, but then maybe supplement that, like you mentioned, with the ethical hacking course potentially as well. Again, don't just run and do certs under the sun. Pick the right ones. Really important to also, I think it is a good way as well to try to get yourself into the door as well, is to understand the frameworks and the best practices for the field you want to go into. So again, we talk about vulnerability management. There's a vulnerability management life cycle. Understand how that that framework and the best practices are. If you understand that, the tool itself, you can learn a tool. You've got you've got Qualys, you've got Nessus and so forth, and Rapid7. They're tools. You can learn those tools. But if you understand the actual framework, that's the bit that you need. Understand the framework, the tools you can learn. And also when it comes to trying to learn those tools, sometimes you're not actually in a role that can actually allow you to have that, or you want to transition from something completely different. A lot of these vendors, they have typical home personal licenses available. If you're going to go into, again, vulnerability management, I know Nessus, they've got a 16 IP based free license, just want your laptop to run through, understand the concepts of how it works. The key thing I would say absolutely is understand the frameworks and the best practices.
That is, that's really good. I think a lot of people have approached it from different angles, but I love the fact that you've gone in straight in and said, become a specialist, find out which is your specialism and hone in on that, check your skills and see which it fits. And I think that's perfect advice. That's when I mentor people, that's the first thing I determine from them. What is it they want to do? Because if they don't know, you can't help somebody that doesn't know what they want to do. And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong. They just say, oh, I want to get into cybersecurity, without knowing what they actually want to get into and what it is that they want to do. Until you know that, it's pointless. And I love the fact that you're basically giving the advice saying, learn the as a sort of, I was going to say gender neutral, but I think you mean vendor neutral skills. I think it's so important that they can utilize or understand the frameworks that underpin the technology, so that they can use any tools that they need within the technology set. So I really want to thank you very much. I think this has been very useful, Mohammed, and I'm very grateful for your time. So thank you for that. Let me stop recording. Right.